welcome back to another episode of Falcon Central Radio on Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am Aaron Freeman, founder of FalcFans.com, joined by my good friend Scott Karasik, writer for Bleacher Report and Pro Football Spots. You're the lead draft guy in Pro Football Spot now, Scott?
I'm more of like a contributor there.
All right.
They were like, if you want to be like our main guy, I'm like, I'll wait till 2016.
Okay. All right. Well, he's high up at Pro Football Spot. Today we are going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons. It's April now. We are 16 days away from the first round of the NFL draft?
16 days away.
Yep. So we will be talking about what the Falcons are going to do in the draft. If you have tuned in hoping that we would talk about something other than the draft, you were probably watching the wrong show. We will also be talking a little bit about running backs and when a team like the Falcons, who may or may not need a running back, should draft a running back. And as usual, we will be answering your mailbag questions this week. Not as many as we usually have, but maybe that means we might be out of here before 11 o'clock. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Probably not.
Probably not. All right, Scott, let's dive into the draft. We usually start this show by talking about some recent news. As far as Falcons news is, we had a couple of visits last week since we last did this show. Bud Dupree and Vic Beasley were in town last Thursday. Dante Fowler met with the Falcons on Sunday. If we go back even further, the Falcons did a workout with Randy Gregory in March. We saw some curious Dan Quinn tweets from the University of Missouri. So I think, it's probably safe to say that they flew out there to work out I don't know, maybe Shane Ray, Marcus Golden, a couple of other guys. So it seems like the Falcons are dialed in on looking at some of these top pass rushers. What are your thoughts on some of these games?
I mean, I do like the idea that they're going to be considering Bud Dupree. If Beasley and Fowler are gone, you got to take Dupree over pretty much anybody. I know it sounds counterintuitive because I have been preaching about three-cone times lately, but I feel like he's a good fit for the defense. He runs faster than his cone suggests, and he's just the guy that you would want as that moldable ball of clay who's a ridiculous athlete off the line. You'd want Bud Dupree. Shane Ray, Falcons are looking at him as a second-round pick, not as a first-round pick. Maybe he's a trade into the back end of the first, but not a top 10 pick. There's no team in the top 15 that considers Shane Ray a top 15 pick.
Okay. Hopefully the States are the exception.
Yeah, their grades are done. They're literally just waiting right now. They go on these visits to waste time and to get to know the guys that might end up on their team at some point.
Yep.
That's all these visits are good for. They're not every team is going to go out and meet every one of these top 40 guys on their boards, these top 30 guys on their boards, because that's who they want on their team, and they want to make sure they're comfortable with them as people first, in person, talking to the coaches. And then you got things like Locals Day. So the Falcons could bring in every single player from Georgia Tech that went to high school in Atlanta, or if they went to, I want to say Alabama and Auburn, they can also come in. Or UAB, but that's because UAB's got a dead program.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, before anybody reads too much into these visits, it's one of those things where I can't recall all the guys that they brought in last year, but there was a couple of guys that really were some of their, later rounds. It's not necessarily like they're only going to meet with the guys that they're targeting with their number one pick. Like last year, I know they met with Terrence West. I want to say Storm Johnson was another guy that they brought in, but it's not one of those things where, oh, the Falcons flew out to Missouri to work out Shane Ray. That means they're targeting with their first round pick. I think Scott is dead on. I think they're more doing their due sort of diligence and looking at, okay, what do we really think about Shane Ray? Let's give him one last workout. Let's find out if that horrible 3-cone was just him having a bad run or he's legitimately that stiff.
For comparison, they had DeMarcus Lawrence in last year for a private visit, and he was a second-round pick, and he was going to be their second-round pick.
Yeah.
And that's the guy who I've been comparing grade to.
Okay. Yeah. What was I going to say? I was going to say, I don't know what I was going to say. Yeah, but oh no, on the other visits with Dupree, Beasley, Fowler. I think, I don't know. The Falcons are, I've read where people say that the Falcons and NFL teams in general, they know that other teams are monitoring who they bring in. And so they throw in a couple of guys that they meet with that they don't really intend on drafting, but they want other teams to think that they're intending on drafting him so that the guy that they really want to draft might fall. They might draft somebody else. I guess my question to Scott would, besides maybe Ray being that sort of guy, do you think there's a possibility that any of the other 4 pass rushers is more, not to say that the Falcons aren't interested, but they've kind of already made a decision that we're not probably going to take that guy?
I think Randy Gregory's that guy.
Okay.
Even though he's a ridiculous athlete, I think, at least in the top 10, I don't think Randy Gregory is going to be the pick. Now, if he falls to 42, even if they get Bud Dupree or Vic Beasley or Dante Fowler, you still take Randy Gregory because you're not stupid.
Okay.
And because you understand, hey, Randy Gregory on one side, one of those other 3 guys on the other side, Rashid Hageman and Jonathan Babineau coming through the middle on pass downs, you got a pretty good pass rush there. Even if, in your view, Aaron, Hageman is just that guy who eats a double team on the inside, that's still more than what, Tyson Jackson can do.
That is definitely true, yes. Hageman can do more in his sleep than Tyson Jackson.
Well, yeah, and if Hageman, puts in the work and balls out and magically turns into this amazing prospect that we all thought he was coming out of college and somehow gets, scratches the surface of his potential and gets 4 sacks this year, that's already more than what we were expecting, or at least what you were expecting.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Before we get back on these pass rushers, I do want to ask you one question about Hageman. I guess they say he's gotten down to like 295, right?
Yeah, between 295 and 300.
Do you think that adds fuel to the fire that what I've been kind of saying all along, that he might be playing more 5 technique defensive end, and one of the reasons why he slimmed down?
Not really, because they made Red Bryant bulk up.
Well, I don't think you can really control Red Bryant's weight, but
you really can't. But still,
Red Bryant will.
Tony McDaniel did a similar thing. He slimmed down about 15, 20 pounds before they put him in as the 3 technique on every single down. So I think it's very possible that they like him as a 3 technique, and that they feel that Brian Cox is going to put his foot far up enough his, ass, just to put that drive in there, to where he's not, as our good friend Steve White would say, soft as puppy shit.
Yeah, I heard that. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time this summer to talk about Rashid Hageman. But going back towards the draft, one thing I've been thinking about recently about Bud Dupree, And this is one of the reasons why I think I feel a little differently than you, Scott, that I think he's probably the guy that the Falcons won't take at 8. I've heard a lot of people talk recently, and it's certainly something that's been rattling around in my mind a little bit. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, I've heard the comp that maybe Bud Dupree isn't a great pass rush prospect, and his athleticism makes him comparable to guys like Ziggy Ansah or Jason Pierre-Paul or Jamie Collins is another example. But the interesting thing to me that I'm having a hard time with, and maybe this is me nitpicking, is that Dupree doesn't really have the sort of length that those guys had. All of those guys basically had like 34-inch arms. And I do understand that, to a certain extent, arm length can be a little bit overrated when you're talking about splitting the difference between like 5/8 of an inch of an arm. But I do wonder maybe Dupree, even though he has the athletic skill set to be this prolific pass rusher, maybe he winds up being more of a player like Jamie Collins, who's more of a versatile athlete that you don't just say pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think he can do a multiple role, but early in his career, you don't use him like that. Early in his career, you let him adjust to the NFL, and you say, hey, get after the quarterback, stop the run on your way to the quarterback, worry about the rest later. And he's a very good athlete. He didn't time well in the shuttle or the cone, but he's a better athlete than those would suggest. Same with Dante Fowler. He's a better athlete than than his shuttle and cone time suggests too. I don't know if it was a bad day for them at the combine, whether they were exhausted from doing all the stuff the night before. But those guys are, both those guys are just ridiculous athletes, and Bud Dupree is probably one of the most sparked up athletes you'll see. In this draft, he's probably the most athletic player not named Vic Beasley.
Byron Jones might be. I think Byron Jones, at least from Sparks' perspective, is. I saw something on Zach Whitman's blog that basically said he's like one of 4 players in the past decade that is a literal 3 Sigma athlete, which is why he calls his blog 3 Sigma athlete. But people go check that out. Plug for Zach Whitman.
You have to understand what 6 Sigma is to understand 3 Sigma. Basically, he's saying that it's completely. What is it? The 3 Sigma rule is if you're 3 standard deviations away from the middle, the average, you're considered exceptional. You're considered rare. You're considered one of, thousands. And, Byron Jones is that at corner, but I don't know how Spark works in terms of weight versus the actual measurements.
Okay. All right. Yeah, then you might be right, but I'm just saying, at least from that measurement, Byron Jones is the best athlete in this draft. But hey, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you whether Vic Beasley is the number 1 and Bud Dupree's number 1 and 2 versus being like 3 and 4. So they're definitely in the top 5. So I'm not. I'm not going to split hairs over that.
No, I'm not going to split hairs with you on that at all. They're all just ridiculous athletes.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about Randy Gregory, and you said you don't think the Falcons are going to take him at 8. I saw on Monday Morning Quarterback, Peter King wrote basically that a couple of teams at the top of the draft are okay with Gregory's off-field issues. And so I guess the question I was going to ask you, but it seems like I already got that answer. Do you think the Falcons are one of those teams that are okay with his off-field issues?
No, because there's something more than just the weed. That, again, I'm not at liberty to say, but I confirmed it with his agent. And yeah, the team I think that is falling in love with Gregory, that won't care what his off-field stuff is a team that's never cared about off-field stuff. Washington. I think they love him. So it wouldn't shock me if he was the pick at 5, even if both Beasley and Fowler are there.
I'm starting to lean that way. That to me is sort of the ideal scenario for all these folks that want the Falcons to take Fowler at 8. You probably have a guy like I think Jacksonville's going to take Beasley at 3 personally, but I know Fowler has been the guy that's usually mocked there. But
I think they do something crazy like they did last year and take Bud Dupree.
That could happen. I do think, I think one of the reasons why I think Beasley is because Jacksonville is going to do something unexpected, as they probably are always going to do. But I think it's going to be the less crazy of taking Vic Beasley. So, but then, basically Beasley goes 3, or at least in the scenario I'm picturing, Beasley goes 3, Gregory goes 5, and then Fowler's there at 8 for the Falcons. So at least this week, that's the way I feel like the draft is going to go. Next week, I'll probably change my mind.
Which would make sense.
Yeah, that's what happens. Between now, over the next 16 days, I'll probably run at least 16 different mock drafts for the top 8. And I'll probably end up changing, at least try to change one pick to see different variables and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens. Okay, well, all right, Scott, you want to get into our old segment that we haven't done in a while? We squash the beef?
Yeah, we might as well.
All right, well, this week, guys, we don't have a player that we're going to argue about. We're going to talk about when should a zone blocking team like the Falcons take a running back. Now, I'm of the opinion that they should take a running back on the day 2 of the draft, so in the 2nd or 3rd round. Scott believes, like a lot of people believe, that the Falcons can wait day 3, 4th, 5th, maybe even 6th round and get pretty good running back, probably an undervalued running back. So we're going to debate this, even though I think we have similar opinions. I just think we're slightly off on them, so that makes more compelling argument. But I guess I'm not disagreeing with Scott's premise, because we argued about this the other day on Twitter, that you can get an undervalued asset, especially for a zone blocking team. I guess my bigger issue is I think there's a perception that just because you have a zone blocking scheme, you can make an average running back, say like a literal 5th round talent, literal 6th round talent, into a good running back because you play a zone blocking scheme. And I don't quite agree with that. So I don't know, Scott, if you feel differently.
I think you have to look for traits. I'm not saying you look for an average, zone blocking, or an average running back, or an average player, a 5th round talent. I'm saying you look for the market inefficiency on the skills that you use. So I'm saying the zone blocking scheme is more of the money ball effect, as opposed to we can just throw a running back there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think one of the players that's used often as an example is, oh, well, you can just put any old guy behind a zone blocking scheme as Aaron Foster. And I think there's a very, very big misconception about, the caliber of player that Aaron Foster was. Like a little known fact that people don't know.
It's probably a 4th round pick without the issues.
Well, yeah, basically he got a 2nd round projection the year before he came in the draft, and he decided to go back to Tennessee for one more year. And Arian Foster is, some people would describe him, he's a different kind of cat. He's not necessarily, he can rub people the wrong way, just his personality, And he had a bad, senior year at Tennessee. He got hurt. He was hurt a ton that entire year. He had fumble issues. Basically, it was like the perfect storm, given the medical red flags, some teams questioning his character, his maturity, all those sort of things. It was like the perfect storm to take a guy that was a legitimate early round talent, maybe not a second round talent, but certainly a guy that, a third round talent. I think we can split the difference between second and fourth round and say he was a third round talent. And basically, he fell off the NFL radar. So it's not like Houston, oh, they just got this guy, this random player that turned out to be really good. Because, I think people have a misconception. Like, you look at Arian Foster, he's really good in that zone blocking scheme. Ben Tate was pretty good in that zone blocking scheme, but pretty much everybody else Houston's thrown out there hasn't been that good. You look at Marshawn Lynch is great in Seattle in their zone blocking scheme, but Robert Turbin and Kristen Michael really have been average. So it's not as if like all of a sudden you just put this, you can put anybody back there and he'll get 1,000 yards in a zone blocking scheme. And I think that's sort of the misconception I tend to argue more with you, Scott, about, waiting to the day 3. But if you're in a situation where like Alfred Morris was a guy that got drafted in the 6th round, typically because NFL teams really value speed at the running back position because of, the so-called committee system. Unless you're that guy that they think is going to be a bell cow, that's going to be a top 50 pick, like a Le'Veon Bell, like a Carlos Hyde, like a Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, etc. Basically, NFL teams are like, you're only going to get 5 to 8 snaps a game or carries a game, and we're not going to give the ball to somebody that's a grinder, that's a power runner that needs volume carries. That's why a guy like Michael Turner was a 5th round pick. He's not valued as much. Alfred Morris, because he ran like a 4.7 at the combine, teams were like, he's a grinder. He's not going to be that explosive running back. And the guys that get valued in the draft after those bell cow running backs are the speed guys. It's why a player like Isaiah P gets drafted higher in the 2nd round. It's like a Jerick McKinnon gets drafted in the 3rd round.
He was so bad too.
Who, Pete?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that. That was a massive reach.
I had a 6th round grade on Pete.
Yeah, I think I had like a 5th round grade on him, maybe a 4th, maybe if I was smoking crack. But the point I'm trying to make is you had a guy like Alfred Morris who, if not for that sort of preference that NFL teams have for speed guys, probably should have been a 4th round pick. He played at a lower level competition at Florida Atlantic. And so teams were like, oh, well, he's just beasting these lower level, these Sunbelt defensive players who aren't very good unless you go to Troy or something like that. And then he runs the slow 40 and he plays fullback at the Senior Bowl. And they're like, he's okay, but he's nothing special. And so he's one of those players that gets undervalued. And I think what you're saying, Scott, with the market sort of inefficiency, a player like Alfred Morris is a great pick on day 3. And I agree 100% with you. A player I think that could be that sort of player is Malcolm Brown from Texas, who I'm recently on his bandwagon. Got a recommendation from Andrew Parsons on that. But I think he's one of those guys that could be that sort of, he's really a 3rd round talent, but because he doesn't have this fast 40, he's more of a grinder than an explosive, dynamic player. Teams aren't going to value him as high, but he has great feet. I think he had like the 4th best 3-cone at the combine. He played in the zone blocking scheme at Texas. That's all they ran. It was basically stretch plays. So he's one of those players that I think if we waited to like round 5 to get him, I'd be like ecstatic. But I think going back to the previous point, I'll stop talking in a second. But I think too often people think, oh, you can put anybody in a zone blocking scheme. You can wait till the 6th round because, it doesn't really matter. But I think that's my bigger issue with the debate.
Well, and that's why I think the market inefficiency right now is B-backs out of Georgia Tech's offense. And specifically, St. John Days would be excellent in the scheme because he reminds me of Alfred Morris. He's got that same kind of vision. He's got that same kind of balance. I think you take him in, the 7th round, right at the end, and you throw him out there and say, hey, compete. And then I think he wins the job. Honestly, I think he would win the primary running back job, and you'd have Devontae Freeman as a change of pace, and you have Anton Smith as that home run hitter.
All right, yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't like Days as much as you do. It's not to say I don't like him. The player he reminds me of is Jason Snelling, so it's not as if that's you know me, Scott. That's not an insult, but
Yeah, that's like saying, oh yeah, he just reminds me of my favorite player ever.
yeah. But I think the thing about Snelling was he probably wasn't a lead running back, but he's more of a guy that if he's part of a committee, then you're going to be happy with him more so than giving him 12 or 15 carries a game. He's more of a 8 to 10 carry sort of guy, but it's really splitting hairs.
Well, I also don't think that you're gonna see that one lead back in Atlanta anytime soon. I think they're going to run a committee. I think it's going to be a 3, maybe even 4 guy just rotation, as many as they could get, just cycling through.
Probably right. My personal opinion is I would love to see them get, a Le'Veon Bell, a Marshawn Lynch sort of guy, and I think you can only get those guys early in the draft. I would love to see this team go back to being the sort of team they were in 08, which is, basically saying, hey, Matt Ryan, you know what? You only have to throw the ball like 25 times this week. And, we'll just run the ball 40 times and we'll win. That's how we'll just win games. I would love to see the Falcons become that team again. I think they could if they used a high pick on a running back. Obviously, players like Gurley and Gordon. I think J.H.I. has the potential to be that sort of guy. But at the same time, I understand that given the Falcons' other needs, running back and, the fact that Devontae is on the team, and even though I've been a little dismissive of Devontae as being the number one running back, I do think he can split carries with another guy. And if you're going to ask him to split carries, then you're really talking about more like a 3rd or 4th round pick sort of dude. So, I get the Falcons probably won't draft one of those guys high, but I would love to see it.
I think if they take J.H.I. in the 3rd round, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to make it that far, though. I think he's going to get scooped up in the late 2nd. Someone like Arizona is going to draft him or something.
I mean, it's possible. But I think that, again, I wouldn't be opposed to J.I. in the 3rd round. But in my opinion, if you're taking a guy in that 2nd day, they better have the potential to be just fucking special.
That's fair.
They better have that potential to be Marshawn Lynch in the scheme, to be Michael Turner in the scheme, to be, Terrell Davis or Adrian Peterson within the scheme. I'm not saying you're going to get an Adrian Peterson in the 3rd round, but you can have a guy who fits like Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
And who can produce like Adrian Peterson. Because Clinton Portis and the zone blocking scheme put up back-to-back 1,500-yard years on the ground. To me, that's producing like Adrian Peterson does.
Yeah. That was
detriment to his career was being traded for Champ Bailey.
Yeah. That was before Peterson was in the league, so it was basically like Portis was like right after LT as like the guy that people considered the best running back in the league back then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, because by then I think Marshawn was gone. I mean, not Marshall. Marshall Faulk was gone, and Sean Alexander was done. And maybe Steven Jackson might have been the consensus number 2, but whatever.
Well, Jackson wasn't drafted until 2004.
When was Portis's 1,500-yard seasons?
His 1,500-yard seasons were 2002, 2003, and 2005.
Oh, okay.
And in 2008, he had one. But the thing is, Denver was keeping him fresh. He was seeing 270, 290 carries and putting up that kind of production. Yeah. That's what I think Jay Ajayi or Todd Gurley or Melvin Gordon could do in Atlanta. But I'm not touching any of them in the 1st round. You don't take a running back at 8 because you're not stupid.
Yeah.
Especially not one coming off of an ACL injury, which has never happened before. By the way, no NFL team in history has taken a running back the year after tearing his ACL in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Wasn't Willis McGahee the highest?
23rd or 24th overall.
Yeah, and people were surprised by that when Buffalo took him because they already had, Travis Henry, I think?
Yeah, they already had Travis Henry, and yeah, he won a 23rd overall, and that was the highest that I found, honestly. So teams in the top 20 don't normally take a guy.
Yeah, that was the pick we gave up to get Peerless Price.
Yeah, it was. We all know who won that trade.
Yeah. Yep. Good old Falcons. Terrible first-round trades.
Kept that pick, and even though Peerless Price and that whole entire wide receiver class that year sucked outside of Andre Johnson, Atlanta could have at least kept that 23rd pick for Dallas Clark and run some fun 2 tight end sets.
Yeah.
Or taking Namdi, or taking your boy Peanut.
Yeah.
Because I know you're a Peanut Tillman, just huge fan of him.
I mean, if you like football, you got to like Peanut Tillman, right?
I mean, like, he's a good football player, but like Peanut Tillman today, Peanut Tillman for his career I loved, but Peanut Tillman today.
That's fair. I can't remember. I don't remember who I was in love with that draft. 03. Yeah,
anybody not named Peerless Price?
Oh, that was just a nasty draft. Oh God, this is terrible.
Oh, it was an ugly draft. I'm going through the names right now, and I'm like, second round pick. They could have gone OC instead of Brian Scott and had a much better pick. Although Brian Scott had a decent career as a what would you call it?
Nickel linebacker?
Linebacker safety mix.
Yeah.
He had a good career in Buffalo doing that.
Yep.
And then the Falcons didn't have a third round pick for some reason.
Yeah, I don't
They
know.
traded it for Martin Biblo the year before. Okay, so yeah, that's the reason why Dan Reeves got his general manager duties stripped.
Yeah.
The first thing, right after his first offseason with Dan Reeves or with Arthur Blank, was because Dan Reeves is an idiot.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he traded a first round pick that wound up being Jamal Lewis for Reggie Kelly.
Yep, that was a great one right there.
I don't care how much you love Reggie Kelly, but unless he plays like Tony Gonzalez, he's not worth a first round pick.
Yep. Falcons can certainly say they are in the history books for basically investing a first round pick in a blocking tight end. Awesome pick right there.
I blame Dan Reeves.
Yeah.
And they already had like 4 tight ends on the roster too.
Yep. Yes, they did. Yeah, they had OJ Santiago, Kozlowski. Yeah. That's the classic Dan Reeves. I want to run the football, so I'm going to invest all my money in guys that will run the football, help me run the football. So I think they used like a third round pick on Jeff Polk that year, the fullback from like Arizona State or whatever. I don't think he played it down with the Falcons.
When they had Bob Christian.
Yeah.
Who, not surprisingly to you, they got Bob Christian as a, you know how the sentence ends, undrafted free agent.
Hey, fullbacks, man. It would only take another decade of teams whiffing on fullback draft picks before, teams started to figure out, hey, maybe I should not draft these fullbacks.
You know how many fullbacks have been drafted in the past decade?
No, I don't, Scott. Too many?
About 30.
Yeah. Too many.
For the last 5 years, only about 8.
Yeah. That's about 8 too many, but No, 7 too many. I'll give credit. Bruce Miller. That's a good pick.
Well, it's like Bruce Miller, and then there are a couple others that I noticed that I was like, Aaron would forget. Oh, Marcel Reese.
I don't think he was drafted. He was an undrafted free agent.
I think he was drafted. He was on my list of draft picks.
Well, we'll look it up. All right, Scott, do you think we've settled this running back issue?
I mean, basically, I'm okay with a day 2 pick on a running back as long as it's a transcendent or potentially transcendent talent. If you're getting Clinton Portis, sure. If you're getting, who's the Roy Helu Jr. guy? Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
And is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I'm for getting a day 3 running back if you're getting a guy that's going to be undervalued. If you're getting, basically Alfred Morris, which is a guy who's too slow to get drafted on day 2.
Well, here's the thing. I don't see 15 running backs going in the first 2 days, going in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
So your day 3 guys are going to be, you'll have one of these guys fall. Jeremy Langford, Jay Ajayi, David Johnson, Duke Johnson, Mike Davis, Carlos Williams, Buck Allen, Tyler Varga. Like, these are guys. Oh, and I didn't even mention a guy who I'm not even high on, but is probably a good fit for the Falcon scheme in TJ Yeldon or Zach Zenner.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, there's a ton of running back talent in this year's class, a ton of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you may not have this ridiculous Alfred Morris guy fall. You might not have Terrell Davis fall to you in the 6th. You might not have Mike Anderson fall to you in the 5th. You might not have Ruben Drones fall to you in the. You notice all the names that I'm picking up are third day, are now what would be considered third day picks because they're market inefficiencies. And most of them are bigger backs. They're not smaller backs, they're bigger backs. They're 215 to 230 pound guys, like your Peyton Hillises, that can get confused for fullbacks.
Mm-hmm.
That you can take in that third day. And yeah, Peyton Hillis was a draft pick. He was a drafted fullback that wound up playing running back. So.
Yep. You're right. You're right. We talked about this a little when we first learned that Bobby Turner was hired as the running backs coach. Traditionally in Denver, they did target bigger running backs, usually guys 220 plus. I remember a guy they drafted from Pitt, Brandon Myree, who was kind of slow, but a 230-pounder grinder, sort of downhill, sort of running back. And I think that's really where the market inefficiency, what I was describing earlier. Basically, if you run like a 4.6, unless you're, I can't think of anybody, but like I don't even know if Carlos Hyde ran a 4.6, but you have to be like a Mark Ingram type of prolific running back running a 4.6 to get drafted on day 2 or day 1 of the draft. And basically that means, you're going to fall to day 3. And I think just like you agree, if you're going to take a day 2 running back, you want a guy with a lot of upside. I think if you take a day 3 running back, then you want a guy that's going to be undervalued because he just happens to be slow, which doesn't really matter as much in the zone blocking scheme.
I think that's fair.
All right. So we agree and we disagree. So that's a little bit better than normal. Let's jump in these mailbag questions, Scott.
Yes, let's.
All right. We got one from Mr. MMA at Smooth Salcero. He says, outside of quarterback, at what positions do you think we can afford not to draft this year? And Scott threw in the addendum, fullback, kicker, punter, and long snapper too, because those probably would have been our answers. So outside of those 5 positions, what positions can we afford to pass on, if I'm understanding the question correctly?
Yep.
I think I think you need some depth at defensive tackle, but I think you can kind of fudge it with Babineau and Hageman and Jackson and Soliai. and maybe you hit on a undrafted free agent that can be that sort of, or not even really undrafted. You can probably throw Goodman a couple of snaps, Matthews a couple of snaps here and there, and you can basically get away with that for a year. You probably can't say that's your long-term plan, but you can basically get away with that. So defensive tackle is one position I would list.
I'd say defensive tackle. I agree with that. Strong safety.
Yeah.
You know, because you got Moore, you've got Kamal Ishmael, you've got Desmond Salvord. So you got 3 guys there that could play the position to be effective at it. I'd say outside linebacker, honestly. Justin Durant, sitting here watching basketball. Justin Durant and Brooks Reed, you just sunk some money into them. Then you've also got Marcus Rule, Tyler Starr, Prince Shembo. You got a couple guys out there that are going to fit your scheme very well. Have Shembo behind Reed, and that'd be fun. I got asked earlier this week, Shembo changed his number to 91. Does that mean anything? Not really, because he was going to play outside anyway, and linebackers can wear 91. So don't read too much into it. But I mean, when you got O'Brien Schofield, Marcus Rule, Prince Shembo, Tyler Starr, Alan Bradford, Brooks Reed, Justin Durant, you get a lot of guys who can play outside linebacker. Now, inside linebacker, you got Warlow, Bartu, and Stupar. So you might need someone in there.
Oh, you don't need anybody.
Again, you might need someone for depth at the very least. Honestly, I don't see them going with a mid to high round pick at inside linebacker, at middle linebacker, because I think they want to see what Warlow's got this year.
Yeah.
Because if you read between the lines on all these comments, they're making it sound like Warlow's the starter at middle linebacker, whether Aaron likes it or not.
I think that's probably going to be the plan unless Eric Kendricks falls to 42, which I don't think he will. I think Kendricks is going to go higher than probably people think.
Unless Eric Kendricks, Shaq Thompson, or Stephon Anthony is there at 42, and I think all 3 of them are going to be gone.
Yeah.
So after that, it's a huge drop-off at the position. And don't even come at me with Paul Dawson. That guy's a 5th-round pick.
I am a Dawson fan, but I know there's no chance the Falcons are going to take him.
He's got so many issues off the field that even if he was better than a 4th-round tape grade, he'd be a 6th-round pick. I'm being nice because I liked his pro day.
He did run a good 3-cone, so I'll give him that.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. I don't know if Scott's going to agree with me. I think you can afford to pass on tight end. I think you have 3 guys there, unless you're getting a guy that's going to be a huge upgrade. I don't think you got a receiver in Tammy, you got a blocker in Moeaki, you got a whatever you got in Toilolo. You got a body at least. You can do some blocking. So unless you're getting a guy that's a transcendent sort of a guy that's going to be a starter for 5+ years, which other than Max Williams and maybe Devin Funches, if you can come in.
Walford.
I don't know about Clyde Walford. He's Ed Dixon to me, which he can start, but you're not going to be happy about it.
He's Algie Crumpler at his best to me. That's his potential.
I think that's a big stretch. I think he's maybe Algie Crumpler in like 07, maybe. Not like Algie in his prime. Algie after like 6 knee surgeries.
You never agree with me on my evals there.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see what happens. Now, to be fair, you were dead on. I was really off on the Travis Kelce evaluation. So, yeah, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But
I mean, when it comes to certain positions, you have no clue. But when it comes to certain positions, I have no clue. So
I have a little clue, but that's fair to say. Other than those positions, what other position could I mean, offensive line. I mean, I think they got to get a body, at least a body at guard. I don't necessarily know they have to get a guard like on day 2 of the draft. I think they can kind of fudge it. It wouldn't be ideal, but I think because you have Baker, you have Person, you have Jared Smith, you can go out and get another veteran guy between now and training camp. There are bodies out there, and not great bodies, but bodies. You can kind of fudge that for a year and hope maybe Mike Person is a lot better than what we think he is. Maybe Sam Baker, in this weird reality, actually becomes the player that he's getting paid to be.
Good joke.
Maybe that works out, or you just wait a year, you kind of just stopgap it, and you say, we'll get a guard next year. Our options will be better next year, which is kind of the situation you're doing at tight end. Basically, you're like, we'll fudge it with the 3 guys we got now, and we'll hope that we can get that difference maker next year. But who knows?
Yeah, which kind of sucks to look at it that way, but it happens. I do like Tammy. I disagree that you don't need a tight end. I just think this tight end class sucks.
Yeah, that's a lot of it.
That's what it is more than anything else. So do you have enough to make it through a year and give Matt Ryan, a combined one tight end that can get 80 catches for 1,000 yards and 2 touchdowns? Probably. Can Levine Toilolo magically turn it around and look like late run Tony Gonzalez? Probably. Not probably. Can he? Yes. Will he? Probably not.
Probably not.
But can he? Yes. He's got the talent to do it. He just there's something not clicking there.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold my breath on, I'm probably Toilola's biggest fan, which basically makes me an army of one. But I'm not going to hold my breath too much on him becoming a good player. I think he can become a competent player that we won't be complaining about a year from now. But I do think this last year, probably didn't do well for his confidence because he basically got thrown to the wolves and got ripped apart. And, hopefully he'll figure it out, but I'm not going to hold my breath over it.
I wouldn't hold your breath over it either because, yeah.
Obviously, center and tackle are 2 positions that the Falcons don't have to draft somebody at. If they took a developmental center in the 7th round, if they took a swing tackle on day 3, I know I wouldn't complain about it, but it's not something that they need.
You mean there's a center out there that's better than James Stone?
Maybe.
There's like 8 of them in this draft.
Don't let some people hear you say that. Some people think James Stone is the truth.
Yeah, but that person also got kicked off your show because he was too much of a Debbie Downer all the time.
All right, well, I was going to be vague about it, but okay, there you go. So some of you guys know who we're talking about. Yeah.
I had a 20-page thing on the official Falcons message board that made me quit the message board because I thought it was so dumb. I was like, these people are really this stupid to believe that just because a guy went to Tennessee, he's going to be this savior at center when they've got their best center sitting on the roster right now in Joe Hawley. Message board is dumb.
Hey, you gotta love that SEC bias. Yes, the SEC does produce the most talent by far in the NFL. But just because you play in the SEC doesn't mean you're going to be good. Just ask Andre Woodson. Just ask pretty much any quarterback not named Manning from the SEC. And maybe if you want to throw Cutler and Stafford in there, but that's not really saying a whole lot. Any quarterback that's played in the SEC in like the last 20 years has stunk in the NFL other than those 4 guys, basically. So,
but 2 of them are just average.
Pretty much.
Let's be honest. Jay Cutler is an average NFL starter. Matt Stafford isn't average NFL starter with ridiculous stats. Because if you had Calvin Johnson to throw to, you would have ridiculous stats too.
I remember those arguments fondly about people basically back in 08 saying, why would the Falcons take Matt Ryan? Andre Whitson played in the SEC against better competition and put up better numbers. Clearly, he's the better player, but you still get those arguments from time to time. No one denies that the SEC is the superior conference in football, talent-wise. But generally speaking,
they don't have the best quarterbacks because not a single coach can scout a pro-style quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're really gonna roll the dice on an SEC player just because they play in the SEC, it's really like defensive linemen and maybe linebackers. You're really gonna say, oh, he dominated in the SEC. That means he's gonna be good in the NFL. Like outside of that, it's like really the SEC. I mean, it's not to say that the SEC doesn't produce other quality players at other positions. It's just it's not significantly better than any other conference.
Yeah, defensive front seven and offensive line.
Yeah, offensive line. Yeah.
So basically, the fat boys.
Yeah, the trenches.
But yeah, you can win a championship drafting trenched SEC players. But if you want some speed, you look at the ACC, you look at the Pac-12. If you want some quarterback talent, you look at the Big Ten, you look at the ACC, you look at the Pac-12.
And yes, we do realize that we just said SEC trenches players are superior, and we're in an argument where we're saying James Stone isn't all that, but it's not everybody. Like, look at Mike Johnson. He was a great SEC player, but didn't amount to much in the NFL.
Well, and Alabama players are their own special, block of shit.
Yeah. It's like Julio Jones, Marcel Darius.
You're either a top 15 prospect like C.J. Mosley, or one of those guys, or you're a block of shit that played at Alabama and you got bumped up because you played at Alabama.
Yep.
You're either ridiculous or you're a turd.
Let's get through the rest of these mailbag questions. We spent like 20 minutes on this one question. All right. Same guy, Smooth South Sarah asks, what positions of need would you be okay with waiting until day 3 to address? Which I think pretty much is the same question, right? No, that's not the same question. No.
I mean, running back, backup linebacker, anything depth. So linebacker depth, defensive tackle depth, cornerback.
Yeah.
If you need a starter, you get it on those first 2 days. If you need a backup, you can wait.
Yeah.
I'd be open to a tight end in the late rounds that they thought was just this ridiculous player. I'd be open to a running back in the late rounds. The 3 spots that I'm not open to a late round player are left guard, because I think that's a huge need, free safety, and pass rusher.
I would agree with you on the free safety and pass rush. I do think you can, obviously I want a good guard. Don't get me wrong. But if they basically, okay, we're going to get a pass rusher in round 1, we get a free safety in round 2, and, somebody really good at another position is there in round 3 that falls that you thought was going to be a top 50 pick and is there at 73 or wherever we pick, and you take him and he's not a left guard, then I'm okay with basically say, okay, we'll wait to the 5th or 6th round. We'll get some athletic guard, and we'll just redshirt him this year, and hopefully he can start for us next year. So that's what the Seahawks did with J.R. Sweezy.
Oh man, J.R. Sweezy should have not played. Ugh. If Atlanta wants a J.R. Sweezy, they might as well put Jarrett Smith out there at left guard.
Okay.
It's the same friggin' guy.
Yeah, basically. Seahawks try to catch lightning in a bottle twice. So.
Well, lightning in a bottle. Sweezy's not that good. He's a great athlete that has no idea what he's doing with his hands. He is Ricky Bobby.
He's functional. I'd say he's functional now. He didn't start that way, but he's okay. He's okay now.
Ricky Bobby.
I get that.
What am I supposed to do with my hands? What am I supposed to do with my hands?
For anybody listening to this, you're not getting that, but okay.
What?
Yeah, people listen to the show, not just watch it.
Oh no, they'll understand the Ricky Bobby reference.
Hopefully they will. Let's move on to the next question. DSizzle78 asks, enough talk about edge rushers. Let's talk about who we target in rounds 2 to 7. Guard, inside linebacker, running back, wide receiver, cornerback, safety, all are needs.
Yeah, but pressing needs are left guard and free safety. Everything else you listed there is depth. Because you've got starting caliber players at inside linebacker, at running back, at wide receiver, at cornerback, at, defensive tackle, to throw another one out there. Edge rusher is the Falcons' biggest need. Left guard is their second biggest need, in my view, because I don't trust Mike Person. I haven't seen him play more than 60-something snaps, and I don't count preseason because he's always going against second teamers. So, you want a guard name to look out for in the 3rd round? Ali Marpet out of Hobart. And again, y'all are going to hate it because he didn't play in the SEC, but he's a beast. He should have played in the SEC, but he wanted to get an actual education instead of, the University of Alabama.
All right. I would say, I guess if I'm mocking the draft, round 2, I think you get a safety. Round 3, I guess you get a guard there, even though I secretly want the Falcons to get a wide receiver there. But round 4, probably I'd go corner. Round 5, running back. Round 6, I don't know. I feel like that's a good time to get a defensive tackle. And round 7, you just probably take another corner because I don't want to see Phillip Adams play.
You got 2 7th-rounders.
Okay, then you take 2 corners. I guess maybe then you take a linebacker, I guess, with that second rounder.
I mean, yeah, you got guys in that 7th round, like the Michael Orakpos, the Hayes Pillards, the Bryce Hagers of the world.
Yeah.
That, are going to be good depth guys long term. Maybe even Ben Heaney out of Kansas. Atlanta showed interest in him, and he's a good athlete. He's a really good athlete, so I can see them liking him. Again, market inefficiency. Another name out there is Marcus Rush out of Michigan State.
Okay. All right. The wheels were grinding in my brain trying to remember him. But yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He's pretty good. He's not amazing, but he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's draftable.
But you're talking the 7th round.
Yeah.
You're not getting amazing in the 7th round. You're getting depth in the 7th round. Unless you, for whatever reason, think that you can get a Pro Bowler at every single spot, but that's not possible. Because it's not possible to get a Pro Bowler at every single round. You have to get some rotational guys somewhere. Hence why the Corey Bierman 5th-round pick back in 2008 was great. Because he's been at least a rotational player for a long-ass time.
Yeah, and I think day 3 is probably where we might really see sparks sort of show up, where we might see maybe a guy in the 5th or 6th round. We're like, that guy? They really like that guy, and then we come his spark score, and we see that he's like in the 75th percentile for his position or something like that in terms of athleticism, and we're like, oh, that's why. They're basically saying, look, you're gonna miss on like 80%, at least 80% of your day 3 picks, at least, or 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. So why not just gamble on upside, athletic ability, which the Seahawks did, and they hit on a couple of those guys: Byron Maxwell, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor. I don't know if you ever heard of those guys. Even J.R. Sweezy, Scott.
He's so bad. He's so bad. Like, literally, the only reason why that Seahawks offensive line even worked was because of Max Unger making ridiculously good line calls, and because Russell Okung is a beast at left tackle. Like, if they didn't have Russell Wilson behind there, they would probably have the most sacked quarterback in the NFL because they are so terrible at pass blocking.
That is fair to say.
Like, the Falcons are going to look so much better this year than the Seahawks on the offensive line because of the natural talent that you have. Jake Matthews, Ryan Schrader are both ridiculous athletes for the position, but they're also really friggin' good at pass blocking. John Asamoah is a great pass blocker and a great athlete for right guard. Joe Hawley looks like a crap athlete compared to those guys, but for a center, he's in the top 60th. He's like in that 65th percentile. So he's still an above average athlete. It's just centers are the slowest guys on the line. They just happen to be the smartest too.
And in Joe Hawley's case, the dirtiest.
Huh?
In Joe Hawley's case, the dirtiest.
Yeah, he's the dirtiest, nastiest dude out there. That's another reason why I think they would like Ali Marpet. Because he's got Joe Hawley's personality on the field. And then off the field, he's just the nicest dude ever. Yeah. So, yeah, he's a choir boy, if you could call a Jewish kid a choir boy.
So now we come down to it. This is why you really like Ali Marpet. He's part of the tribe.
He is a part of the tribe, but he's also a beast athlete. He's also a damn good football player. I also touted Jeff Schwartz, but I mean, what did he do except grind holes and open up holes and protect his quarterback?
Okay.
I also liked his little brother Mitchell. What has he done but actually be good?
I could mention Gabe Carimi, but I won't do that.
Even Gabe Carimi was a solid backup for the Falcons this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a big fan of Gabe Carimi coming out, so I can't say too much bad stuff about him. All right, moving on, we have Kainoa_C asks, if all 5 pass rushers in the draft are gone before number 8, what does Atlanta do then? And Dirty Bird Wilson has a similar question, but he's specifically asking about should the Falcons take Leonard Williams at 8?
They shouldn't. This makes my eye twitch. When you say 5 pass rushers, you're assuming that includes Shane Ray. And Shane Ray shouldn't even be considered at 8. He's not worth the 8th overall pick. So to both Bird Wilson and Kainoa, no Shane Ray. Bad. Bad. Shane Ray's bad. To compound on that, there's no way all 5 of those guys go in the first 7 picks. There's absolutely no way that happens. There's way too much talent at the top of the draft to have a run on those guys. Don't get me wrong. Edge rusher is definitely where the talent in this draft is, but you've also got 2 badass wide receivers. You've got 2 quarterbacks. So that's 4 of your top 7 right there. You've got Leonard Williams, who, if he is there at 8, yeah, I'd be open to it because Leonard Williams next to Rashid Hageman, if Hageman's playing like a badass, that's going to be a fun combination on the inside. But you've got those 5 guys. Then you've also got the potential of like a Brandon Scherf or a L. Collins popping up in that top 7. It's very possible just 2 pass rushers are taken by the time you get to the 8th pick. It's very possible that 1 is taken by the time you get to the 8th pick based on the needs. So I just don't see a situation where all 5 guys are gone. That's just one that doesn't exist. And if all 5 guys are gone, it's because Leonard Williams is sitting right there to take. You take Leonard Williams, you have a fun time with it, and just enjoy. But if Fowler and Beasley are gone, you don't consider Ray because Ray sucks. You don't consider, Danny Shelton because you've already got him in Paul Soliai. Yeah, if Leonard Williams is there, you take Leonard Williams. But you consider Bud Dupree, Randy Gregory, and if for whatever reason those 4 guys, it's just not going to happen. Like, I understand that we're Falcons fans and we think of all the doomsday scenarios, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. The big 4 pass rushers, now, in my opinion, they should be gone if NFL teams were smart. As anybody who followed me on Twitter, I hate when teams take top 10 wide receivers. But someone's going to take a wide receiver. I don't know if both the Bears and the Raiders will take a wide receiver, but at least one of those teams is taking a wide receiver. And you throw in Jameis Winston, and you throw in the very high probability that Leonard Williams is going to be. If Leonard Williams is on the board for the Bears, they're taking him. Regardless
out of those 7 picks, Leonard Williams, Jameis Winston, and Marcus Mariota are all gone. So you really only have to worry about 4 picks. So Jacksonville, they're probably taking an edge rusher. But if they don't take edge rusher, they could go with a receiver. They could go with an offensive lineman. Then you've got the Raiders. If Leonard Williams is there, they're taking Leonard Williams. Otherwise, they might be a Danny Shelton spot. They might do something stupid like that. Then Washington, I think they're taking Randy Gregory no matter what. It just makes too much sense. Then the Jets are going to be the Jets. They're going to pick something random, or they're going to go with the most logical pick at the time, which will probably be Dante Fowler if he's there. And then the Bears, you're looking at a wide receiver.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not as convinced as you that Mariota's going to go. I think he probably will. I think if Tennessee passes on him, which I think they will, I think it's either the Jets or someone like Cleveland trading up to get him. But I'm not 100% saying I think there's a possibility that he falls. But even still, that still means, I don't see a scenario where. I can't see it. I guess mathematically speaking, then there's the possibility that if Williams a wide receiver and Winston are the other 3, then it's possibly the other 4 picks are all pass rushers, but it's not going to happen that way. So I agree with you. One of those 4 guys is going to be there at 8. I think Leonard Williams is the best prospect in this draft. I get why some people don't think that. I get why he's kind of a boom bust sort of guy. I think he'll be a good NFL player. I don't know necessarily that he'll be a great NFL player, but I do think he has the traits to be that sort of, not necessarily, I don't think he's Gerald McCoy or Ndamukong Suh, that sort of monster that just destroys offensive linemen. I don't think he's like Calais Campbell or even Muhammad Wilkerson in that regard, but I do think he can be that sort of better version of Jonathan Babineau / Sheldon Richardson type of guy that's just consistently good week in and week out, but isn't just like making highlight reel sort of plays and just like, how do we block Leonard Williams? I don't think he's that sort of dude, but I think he'll be a very, very good NFL player.
I think he'll be Marcus Stroud.
Okay. I think he'll be better than that, but okay.
I mean, I thought Marcus Stroud was pretty good.
I did like Marcus
every year.
He was very good, but I think he'll be better than Marcus Stroud.
He's just so damn good against the run. That was Stroud. Like, Stroud was that ultimate run stuffer who wasn't huge.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say, I think you can make the argument that Leonard Williams would probably be a better run defender than a true impact pass rusher at the next level. But it's not. That's not to say he won't be a good pass rusher. He just won't be that 8 to 10 sack sort of interior guy that Sue and McCoy are more than capable of being. Kind of like Rashid Hickey.
Boy.
But Scott, okay, I guess someone's going to be watching the show thinking, even though you don't think there's any possibility that all those pass rushers are gone, who would you take if, in the event, all 4 of those pass rushers and Leonard Williams are all gone? Who would you take?
I pray that someone wants a wide receiver so I can trade down.
Okay. All right.
But in that situation, if I'm forced, gun to my head, to take somebody, let's see. I'm just going to go based on my own personal board. Gun to my head, forced to take somebody, I'm going TJ Clemmings.
Okay.
Or Kevin White.
All right. I'd probably
because Kevin White, damn near identical measurements to Julio. And then TJ Clemmings, I mean, you want a guy who can come in and start at left guard or even move. Yeah, you start him at left guard, let him have some fun. He's a powerful guy. He would be ridiculous on the inside of that line. His athleticism on the inside of that line would be just insane.
That's fair. I'm a TJ Clemmings guy.
Well, that's just because you want the pit.
Yeah, maybe. That might be a small part of it.
I mean, you're a total homer, but it's okay.
Yeah. Total. The funny thing, I didn't think Jabal Shearer was that good when he was at Pitt. I thought he was overrated.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Jabal Shearer is that good now.
He's better than I thought he was going to be. I had like a 4th-round grade on him.
Just for kicks and giggles, I'm figuring out what the line would look like with Clemmings at left guard, and it's probably going to look pretty good. I'll post the results up on Twitter later. Anyway, since I have a training class to go to in the morning, I'm going to call it a show. Remember to listen to us every week, 10 o'clock. If you can't make it at 10, we're always archived. YouTube is a beautiful invention. You can find Aaron at Falcons. You can find me at Scott Karasik. You can always follow the show. Aaron and I randomly post stuff on there all the time. So, yeah, have a good day and listen to us next week.